Hey guys, welcome to That Florida Feeling. How is everybody? I hope you've had a good week. It's really hot because, it's Florida and it's summer. We officially made it to, you know, Satan's armpit. I mean, it's almost, well, we're not quite there yet, I guess. We're getting close. That's August. It's hurricane season. Be prepared. Although this is going to be an interesting year, they're still predicting a really, really above average season. So, I don't know. The past few years have been very weird, so let's see what happens. Hopefully, nothing happens. I really, really hope nothing happens. I'm all for quiet years after the past few. Hope you guys enjoyed last week's episode. It's fun talking about those random little towns you didn't know existed. Happy Pride Month. Happy Father's Day, because I won't get to say it before the next episode. I don't think there's anything else I have to say. Happy Friday the 13th. I was like, I feel like I'm forgetting something. Yeah, today's Friday the 13th, so happy Friday the 13th. Hope you're not superstitious. Also, have patience if you're going to wait in line for a $13 tattoo or piercing. If you want a $13 tattoo and you are in the Pinellas area, Holiday, Pasco area, go check out Christina. She's the one that does all my tattoos. I know she's guest spotting somewhere. I'm going to find out where really quick because she's the one that does all my tattoos. And I recommend her because she's amazing. I know it's somewhere in Holiday. After the Fallout tattoos, she's guest spotting there. It's at 2238 US 19 in Holiday, Florida. So check it out. It's cash only. She's amazing. She does a lot of mine. Go. But have patience. And be nice. And tip. And don't be rude. And love of God, if you're going to go get a tattoo or a piercing, put deodorant on. Sorry. I'm good. I've stood in those lines. Just saying. Okay. So, if you saw the episode title, you probably have an idea of what we're going to talk about today. And yesterday was the anniversary of the Pulse nightclub shooting. And so today we're going to talk about it. It's 9 years that on June 12th, 2016, 29-year-old Omar Mateen shot and killed 49 people and wounded 53 more in a mass shooting at Pulse nightclub in Orlando. Pulse nightclub was a gay nightclub in Orlando, and it was horrible. It was bad. I mean, that was the night that nobody knew what was going on, and nobody really knew what to do. That night, Pulse was hosting a Latin night, and unfortunately, most of the victims were Latino. And the shooting was one of the deadliest terror attacks in the U.S. since 9/11, and it was probably the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history until the next year, which was the 2017 Las Vegas shooting. So on June 11th, which was to be the night before, 2016, Pulse was hosting Latin Night, and it was a weekly Saturday night event. In fact, I had gotten invited to it from some friends, not that night, but I'd been invited previously from some friends that worked at Disney. And it was fun. Pulse was a great place. It was a fun place to go, but they always had really cool events. It was so much fun. It was a great place. It felt very inviting, very, anybody could go. Really anybody felt welcome. But they were hosting a Latin night, and in fact, one of RuPaul Drag Race contestants, drag queen Kenya Michaels, was actually supposed to have been performing when the shooting began. Michaels actually survived the shooting, but 320 people were actually inside the club. Were in the club when the shooting began, and Omar arrived at the club and he went towards the building and he got in at 2:02 a.m. and he bypassed an off-duty Orlando police officer working extra duty as a security guard, and he actually went in through a different entrance, and he just began shooting people. He did, and it was, it was scary from if you read the people's events, and I mean, he began shooting. Dozens were killed or severely injured, pretty much instantly. They were either killed directly or by ricochets. The officer attempted to engage, but eventually had to take cover and signal for assistance. He also realized that his handgun would be at a severe disadvantage against the rifle that Mateen was using, because he was using basically a semi-automatic rifle, and versus a handgun, you're going to run out of bullets very fast, unfortunately. He did actually engage Mateen, and that's actually what bought some people time to flee. But unfortunately, Mateen he was a monster. It was a very bad night, and additional officers did finally get there. They got there at 2:04. That's actually a very fast response. That's a 2-minute response. Gruller was actually really good about telling them where he was, and so they were able to engage Mateen, but unfortunately, it kind of turned into a hostage situation in one of the bathrooms. And Mateen was actually able to fire over 200 rounds in a very short amount of time. He was very heavily loaded, which was actually a very big disadvantage to the cops. The problem was, though, during the shooting, that a lot of people thought that it was just fireworks or part of the music. So a lot of people did not realize that it was gunfire. A lot of people didn't realize that it was actually a bad situation. One person did, though. Imran Youssef, he was actually a recently discharged Marine Corps veteran, and he was one of the bouncers, and he actually recognized it as high caliber gunfire, and he jumped over a locked door, which a lot of people were hidden behind. He was able to open the door and help 70 people escape, because they were kind of paralyzed by fear, which is actually super common in a situation like this. So he was actually heralded as being able to help a ton of people, which is great. Unfortunately, a lot of people had that same kind of situation where they were unable to escape and they just had to hide wherever they could. But a lot of people just kind of hid wherever they could, and the guy just kind of kept firing wherever he could. But the survivors did say that Mateen had a very, very interesting, he was just saying random things. And he was, judging by what he said, that they did say that he was very much Islamic. And he said that he wouldn't stop his assault until America stopped bombing his country. So he definitely they judged by this that he was Islamic, and they did go back and look, and he had, let's see, he had sworn allegiance to an Islamic State, and so that was his reasoning for doing this. I'm trying to stay out of the political side of this while I tell you guys that this is probably one of the worst events in Florida or U.S. history. And so, but the great thing about the people that were trapped inside is that they continued to call and text 911. which was a feature, that was new at that time. And they were trying to tell people what he was saying. They were trying to tell people like what he had, possible explosives, where he was. Because he kept saying he had explosives and snipers with him. So they were trying to tell him he might not be alone. He had explosives. So they were actually trying to warn everybody else, which was really brave on their part because they could have been seen. So even the people inside that were still trying to hide to save themselves were brave in their own right, and that's amazing. But the emergency response that Orlando Police and Orange County Sheriff was amazing. In 45 minutes, there was 100 officers to that scene, which is insane. They also brought major support from firefighters and paramedics. 85 emergency medical people dispatched immediately to the scene. At 2:09, the club and at 2:22, though, Mateen himself placed a 911 call in which he began to ramble about the Boston Marathon bombers and other people as his homeboys and a suicide bomber, and he was just rambling on and who he swore allegiance to, and how, he kept going, and then he would hang up, and then he would make other 911 calls and then hang up. But also the people inside were also making 911 calls. Again, that is very brave of them, to be able to get information out to the officers to help other people who are still in there. While this is all going on, they shut out all the glass windows in Pulse, and they were able to get the guy to start trying to stick his head out. And when they did, they would shoot at him. But they were also able to kind of get people to come out as they were doing it. They were trying to rescue as many people as they could. SWAT eventually arrived on the scene after about 15 to 20 minutes. And SWAT actually took over the operation. And when asked, though, by the Orlando police chief why they didn't engage Mateen in the bathroom, he said, one, because they were not in tactical gear, and two, because it went from an active shooter to a barricaded gunman who had hostages. And also, if he had continued shooting, the officers probably would have gone in there, but they didn't, and they did not know where he was and what he had. Also, because there was an 8-minute delay between the last time the shots were fired, because he hadn't shot anything from 2:10 to 2:18. Again, people were continued to be rescued through the nightclub throughout as they could, trying to go in, get people without anybody else getting hurt. By 2:35, they had basically gotten all the people out by saying, basically, if you're alive, raise your hand. And so they had basically gotten everybody that was injured from the nightclub that they could. And then anybody else who was held hostage, and anybody that was still hiding in the dressing rooms, they had to leave until the situation was better. At 2:45, Mateen actually called News 13 of Orlando and told them he was the shooter and began rambling about himself and speaking in Arabic, and said that the shooting was triggered by a U.S.-led bombing strike in Iraq from May 6th. A crisis negotiator was also presented to Mateen, or was present as Mateen was held inside, and that he tried to talk to him. Officers also didn't know if he had explosives with him, but they figured out later it was a battery that fell out of a smoke detector that had been shot. Police negotiators did speak with Mateen by telephone 3 times between 2:48 and 3:27, and he told them at one point he did have a bomb. He also claimed that the vehicle in the parking lot had enough explosives to take out a city block. So he kept making the situation a lot worse. At 3:58, they did finally confirm the shooting. And at 4:21, 8 of the hostages actually had escaped, after they had removed an air conditioning unit from the wall and pulled people out. At 4:29, Mateen told negotiators that he planned to strap explosive vests similar to those used in the 2015 Paris attack to 4 hostages, put them in different corners of the building, and detonate them in 15 minutes. That was the moment that OPD decided they were done with negotiations and they were going in. At 2:30 though a.m., going back, Mateen's wife actually received a call from her mother asking where her husband was. And she texted her husband, and Mateen asked her if she had seen the news. She said no, and all he wrote back was, "I love you." No future text. According to one source, though, she texted him back at one point saying she loved him. She also attempted to call him several times, but he did not answer. She did finally find out exactly what was happening around 4 a.m. after the police told her to come out of her house with her hands up. What a way to find out what your husband was doing. One of the survivors of the shooting did recall Mateen saying he wanted the U.S. to stop bombing his country. And Mateen also told a negotiator to tell America to stop bombing Syria and Iraq, and that's why he was out here right now. So that's, that was his reasoning, which... Now, during the siege, it's very strange. He was actually on his phone making internet searches. It's very strange. He was seeing if people were looking up what he was doing. And while police dispatched the tactical robot discreetly to enter the bathroom to allow communication with two-way hostages via audio. So they actually had a little robot go in and make sure that the hostages were still okay. Now, the FBI actually reported that no shots were heard between the time that they stopped exchanging gunfire with first responders and 5:02. So there was a very long period of time where they didn't hear anything. OPD finally began to breach the outside wall. Just before the breach, though, Mateen entered a women's bathroom where the hostages were hiding and opened fire. One guy stood in front of the women, and he did end up, unfortunately, getting killed. At 5:07, 14 SWAT officers, after failing to blow open a big enough hole into the bathroom stair wall while using a bomb, because the wall structure was one of the concrete walls. They just drove a Bearcat vehicle through the wall. They just went in. They used flashbangs to distract him and then took him out. They drew him out into a hallway, and they engaged, and he was shot 8 times. So he was reported down at 5:17 a.m. It was revealed he was not drunk during the shooting. I don't know why that needed to be in the autopsy, but that's what they said. But 30 hostages were freed after he was killed. Unfortunately, 49 died in the incident. We don't count him. And 58 were injured. 53 were by gunfire. 5 were probably by other causes. And it was a very, very sad night. Pulse was hosting a Latin night, and it was supposed to be a really fun night. And 90% of the victims were Hispanic. Half of those were Puerto Rican descent. And an off-duty U.S. Army Reserve captain was also killed. If you look at the victims' ages, most of them were in their 20s to 30s. And they were just there to have a good time. They were enjoying Latin night. And it's very sad because these people were just there to have fun, and someone just was mad and decided to take it out on them. 44 people were taken to Orlando Regional Medical Center. They received help, and most of them made it, and I think that's really, really great. the last of the injured were actually discharged all the way from September 6th, nearly 3 months after the shooting, and they made it. And I think that's awesome. So, um, you know, they were able to outlive this horrible tragedy. I'm not going to really tell you about the shooter. We don't need to really talk about him. Other than he was just a dick. We don't talk about him. But Pulse was one of those things that changed a lot of things, not just in Orlando, but everywhere else. That's when Facebook kind of created that safety check that you see now. And a lot of places started re-examining their safety and security protocols. Police forces also began to really take into effect that they needed to really increase security, and then really take into effect that they needed to increase security during Pride Month and take it more seriously. And take these, this is a serious thing. And a lot of people also decided, a lot of police departments also realized that they needed to upgrade their equipment because that took them a little bit too long. So, they also they realized that places also needed to have a better initiative to training people in public places on how to treat injuries, and paramedics got some upgraded equipment and a little bit more ways to assess injuries and training on how to stay calm. And maybe not on, they also got new way, like discourage the use of evasive emergency procedures. Maybe don't remove the bullet right then, maybe wait and see what happens. They also had victims assistance efforts, which was really cool. The FBI's Office of Victims Assistance, they provided resources to the victims and witnesses of the shooting, which was able to really have a rapid deployment team and crisis response canines, which, came with people donating blood and, talking about it, and having someone being able to be there just to talk about it. Their victims assistance set up inside of Camping World Stadium by June 15th, which was a great thing to talk about. And then since this did happen in Pulse, the shooting did occur, in a gay nightclub. It kind of spotlighted the FDA's controversial policy that talked about how if you couldn't donate blood, if you had relations like that. But it did force the FDA to reevaluate those policies, which was kind of actually cool because, up until then, they weren't even going to talk about it. So it did spotlight things that needed to be reevaluated. It just came through an unfortunate event. But the Victims Assistance Center, the Orlando Family Assistance Center that's set up inside Camping World Stadium, it was set up on June 15th, and during the 8 days, it provided help to a ton of people, thanks to Orange County, and they stayed open a long time. And the 2 hospitals that treated the Pulse victims did not bill anyone. They announced in August that they were not going to bill anybody. The city of Orlando offered free plots and funeral services to everybody that was a victim of the shooting. Equality Florida, the state's largest rights group, started a fundraising page and raised over $767,000 in the first 9 hours, and was able to cover a lot of things for those families. One Orlando was established by Mayor Buddy Dyer, and they were able to raise a ton of money. Disney World also gave $1 million to the fund. So did NBC Universal, and which they were able to help a bunch of people. I mean, respectively, just by August 12th of that year, One Orlando had raised $23 million by August 12th of 2016. Just to help the people. So, and then IDW Publishing and DC Entertainment created the Love is Love graphic novel at that time and sold to raise money for the victims. And the novel became a New York Times bestseller. Um, so, you know, everybody was willing to step up and help. And that was a good thing because these people needed it in that time. When the shooting happened, a total of 603 calls to 911 were made by victims' families. The victims' families, friends, bystanders, rescue workers, anybody that was dealing with it. And on June 14th, 24 news agencies sent a 4-page letter to Orlando City Attorney jointly demanding the release of the 911 calls. The letter contained requests for scanners and fresh dispatch recordings. Now, of course, the police initially refused due to ongoing investigations, but by June 20th, the FBI released a transcript of the first call. And the reason they did is they wanted the transparency on this. Eventually, it was all released. Everything has been released. And the reason that they did that is they wanted transparency. They wanted everyone to hear what had happened. They wanted everyone to hear how the people had to deal with this. It was the right so you could, it's hard to listen to. It's absolutely hard to listen to because it gives people who work in law enforcement to hear how Mateen was, how he was unruffled and unserious, and how he just didn't, he was cold. But then it gave, you want the victims to be heard. They need their right and their voice. So that was, it was their right to do that. Now, the Pulse building itself has kind of become a bit controversial. On September 14, 2016, the city of Orlando erected a fence around it. And the fence had a commemorative screen that served as a memory, kind of a memorial to the victims and survivors of the shooting. Because, it was private property there, On November 8th, though, of that same year, the city of Orlando announced plans to purchase it for $2.25 million and turn it into a memorial for the victims. It was announced with praise from Orlando's community. The vote was postponed, though. The owner actually declined to sell. It's been so back and forth. The owner eventually created the One Pulse Foundation, and they were going to create a memorial site. And it's just so, it's never actually happened. The building still stands. You can still drive past it. In fact, I drove past it last year. And it's just a very somber sight. I used to drive past it all the time when it was open. Ben, I remember it as a fun place. And now when you drive past it, it's just a very somber sight. It's, and you don't really, and it's just like where it sits, it's just right off the road. It's right off Orange Avenue. It's right past East Cayley. It's just so unassuming. But then you just drive up to it and you realize where you're at, and you just kind of sit there for a second. Because it's right at a light, and you just sit there and you're like, oh yeah. And you get kind of sad. And so I hope they do something with it. I hope they definitely do something with it. Those victims deserve something. They deserve a memorial for what they went through. The survivors that made it through that horrible night. Everybody deserves something because of that, So I know the One Pulse Foundation has also had a little bit of controversy. So I do hope that they do something for them. And I hope it happens soon. It's only right. But it still stands to this day. Now, out of all this, again, there's been a lot of changes. The flags did fly at half-mast yesterday. And everybody's in Florida, it's still very much talked about. We still honor those people. And again, the One Pulse Foundation does exist. They do want to build a memorial at the nightclub, and I hope so. I think it's right. But I do hope it happens soon. Like I said, it has been 9 years at this point. Hopefully by 10 years, we do have a memorial, because it's not going to be forgotten. You know, it was a very, very bad night in Orlando. And, you know, knowing some of those people that were there, it just makes it a little more sadder. Knowing what they could have done or what they could have gone on to do. So, I'm sorry that this is a little sadder version of that Florida feeling. But, you know, it's just a reminder that while Florida is full of beautiful beaches and sunshines and rainbows and it storms every afternoon, sometimes we do still have those storms. I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Please remember to be nice to one another. We need it. We don't need days like this. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Pride Week. Again, happy Father's Day to Pride Week, Pride Month. I hope you guys do have a great happy Father's Day to all those fathers out there. Or all those moms that are having to be dads too. Seriously, I know that's hard on you guys. Drink your water, guys. It is like 90,000 degrees out there, and it's only going to get worse as we get closer to August. Stay prepared for the hurricane season. Yeah, just be nice to one another, guys. We need it. We got too many people who are rude already. All right, guys. I'm not even going to say that's your daily dose of sunshine. Have a good week.
This podcast is a production of Unfiltered Studios. If you would like to know more about joining Unfiltered Studios, please visit our website at unfpod.com for more information.